Welcome to The Debate. Imagine suddenly losing your paycheck today. Not next month, but today.
Yeah, it's a pretty terrifying thought.
Right? How many days could you survive on what you own right now before you just go completely broke? Because for most of the middle class, that number is terrifyingly low, even for people who are earning six figures.
Absolutely. And, when a beginner and investor finally realizes they need to change that math, they face this fundamental choice.
Exactly. Do you adopt a defensive crouch, slashing expenses and hoarding cash? Or do you make a radical psychological shift, embracing the volatility of the market to aggressively accumulate assets?
Mastering the unglamorous foundational mechanics of personal finance first.
And that is exactly what we are exploring today. Taking the perspective of a beginner, we're debating whether the true catalyst for financial growth is, shattering the psychological ceiling of the middle-class comfort zone to prioritize market risk and growth.
Right, or if wealth is fundamentally rooted in aggressive defensive habits, things like strict budgeting, living below your means, and securing a fortress of cash before you take a single risk.
We're grounding this discourse in the frameworks presented in Three Ancient Keys to Wealth.
Yes, specifically analyzing the principles outlined in the chapter, Think Bigger If You Want to Live Large.
I will be arguing that overcoming the deeply ingrained fear of market volatility and shifting your mindset away from salary dependence toward asset accumulation is the vital, non-negotiable step.
And I contend that wealth is built brick by brick through disciplined frugality, reducing your fixed burn rate, and, securing a robust emergency fund. Because without that defensive mechanism, ambition is honestly just a liability.
Okay, let's lay out our core positions to start. From my perspective, we have to begin by entirely redefining what wealth actually is. We have this culturally inherited idea that wealth means a high salary or a luxury car or, expensive vacations.
The typical keeping up with the Joneses aesthetic.
Exactly. But the framework we are looking at provides a much more ruthless, mathematical metric. Wealth is simply your financial freedom. It is defined as your survival time. Literally the exact amount of time you can live on your passive income if your active income drops to zero.
Right.
But the middle-class mindset traps beginners in this psychological comfort zone. We are taught to fear stock market crashes, so we just settle for the illusory safety of a fixed salary. And whatever pennies happen to be left over after we buy the things that make us look successful, we just sit on them. To build limitless wealth, you absolutely must step out of this psychological safety net. You have to prioritize buying growth assets over aesthetic possessions. Look at the classic example of Warren Buffett.
Oh, the house in Omaha.
Yeah. He stayed in the $31,500 home he bought in 1958. He didn't upgrade his lifestyle, he upgraded his asset column. That shift away from the comfort of a paycheck and consumerism toward active market participation, that is the only true engine of wealth.
Well, thinking big is a great motivational concept, I'll give you that. But the actual execution for a beginner relies entirely on conservative, defensive strategies. The idea of overnight wealth through a sudden psychological epiphany or a lucky stock pick is a dangerous myth.
I wouldn't call it a myth, it's just...
Ambition without discipline isn't an investment strategy, it's just gambling. Living strictly within your means is the absolute foundation of prosperity. The principles we're discussing here emphasize that paying off debt and building a 3 to 6 month emergency fund are the necessary prerequisites to any wealth generation.
But don't you think...
For a beginner, disciplined budgeting and reducing fixed expenses are vastly more vital than taking on market risks. You cannot compound what you haven't saved. And more importantly, you cannot survive market volatility if you are teetering on the edge of financial ruin. A sudden market dip will force you to liquidate your assets at a loss just to pay rent. Defense is what actually builds the fortress.
Okay, you brought up this idea of the aesthetic of wealth versus the reality. And I think that's where the psychological barrier really lies. When you look at middle-class success, it is defined almost entirely by possessions.
Right, it's lifestyle creep.
Yes. It's the new car in the driveway, the updated kitchen, the zip code. You're trying to project an image of what you think rich people look like.
The moment your income goes up, your baseline for what you consider a basic need goes up right along with it.
Precisely. And this is why the biggest barrier to wealth isn't a lack of opportunity or a lack of compound interest calculators. It is the psychological comfort of that fixed salary. People surround themselves with peers who reinforce this invisible ceiling, this idea that once you hit a certain income bracket, you are quote-unquote comfortably off, and taking risks is just irresponsible.
Well,
But that comfort is the enemy of abundance. I see why you think that, but let me give you a different perspective. If I'm a beginner and I just focus on lowering my expenses, isn't that just a race to the bottom?
how so?
Think of middle-class savings like treading water. You are safe from drowning in the immediate moment, sure, but you never actually reach a new shore. If you don't redefine your comfort zone and overcome your fear of market volatility, aren't you just going to be frugally tracked in the middle class forever?
See, you're looking at it as deprivation. I come at it from a different way. It's about asymmetric risk. Let's look at the actual mechanics of that survival time equation you mentioned earlier.
Okay, go ahead.
Survival time equals your total liquid assets divided by your daily burn rate, your daily living expenses, right?
Right.
If you lower your daily burn rate through aggressive frugality, your survival time automatically increases without needing to expose a single dollar to the unpredictable swings of the stock market. You instantly become wealthier, by the very definition you just provided, simply by living below your means.
But that has a limit.
If you jump into the stock market trying to outrun your bad spending habits, you're exposing a highly fragile personal economy to massive external shocks.
I hear that, but you are assuming that the defensive posture scales infinitely, and it mathematically doesn't. There is a hard floor to how low you can cut your living expenses. I mean, you still have to eat, you still need shelter,
Sure.
but there is absolutely no ceiling to how much you can grow your assets. If you do what you've always done, if you just save your leftovers and trust a basic 401k because you're terrified the market will crash, you are falling into a trap. By avoiding massive action, you stand to lose hundreds of thousands of dollars in opportunity cost over a lifetime.
Yes, but the chances of failing in your attempts are incredibly high when you step out of the box without a net. Taking risks is necessary eventually, sure, but it has to be mitigated by an emergency fund first. Let's talk about the psychology of that fund.
The rainy day fund?
Exactly. Having 3 to 6 months of take-home pay sitting in a boring, low-yield savings account isn't an oversight. It is the prerequisite for stepping out of your comfort zone. Let me ask you, if a beginner makes this massive psychological leap to invest heavily, but they have zero cash buffer, what happens when the market drops 10% in a week and their transmission blows on the exact same day?
Well, they panic.
Exactly. The psychological pressure forces them to sell their investments at the exact wrong time, at a loss, just to cover the emergency. The cash buffer is what actually allows you to tolerate the volatility you're talking about.
Okay, that makes sense. The cash buffer is the shock absorber. I'll give you that. But you can't survive on pennies in a savings account forever. Let's look at the actual math of staying in that defensive crouch versus the mechanics of growth. Because inflation is the heat that is constantly evaporating the water in your savings bucket. To build real wealth, you need a hose pumping new water in, and that hose is compound interest. The math on early investing is staggering. If a beginner investor saves just $200 a month consistently and earns a historically average 7% return, they will have $500,000 over 25 years.
Yeah, the math is...
Safe savings methods, just piling cash under a mattress or in a zero-yield checking account, can never, ever match that exponential growth. That is why you have to start shopping for the right investments instead of hiding from the market.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that. Let me tell you why. That mathematical marvel of compound interest is fundamentally dependent on one thing, and that's consistency. And where does that reliable $200 a month come from?
From your income.
It comes from the unglamorous, defensive mechanics of expense reduction. We tend to gloss over this, but you have to actively free up cash flow. You cannot consistently invest $200 a month if you are bleeding cash to high-interest consumer debt and inflated lifestyle costs. Look at the material-specific tips: ditching cable for Netflix, dropping the landline, refinancing a mortgage.
But clipping pennies on a landline isn't going to make you rich.
Look at credit card debt. It is literally reverse compounding. If you are paying 19% interest on a balance and earning 7% in the market,
you are moving backward at a rapid pace. Eliminating that debt isn't just playing defense. It is mathematically the most powerful, guaranteed return on investment you can make.
Well, is aggressively managing a spreadsheet truly thinking bigger? I mean, trimming a few subscriptions or cutting down your grocery bill creates a tiny margin, yes, but it doesn't fundamentally change your financial trajectory. The real way to find that $200 or $2,000 is by expanding your income streams, not just shrinking your life.
Expanding income is easier said than done.
But we are living in an era where the barrier to entry for generating side income is practically zero. You can take up freelancing, start affiliate marketing, consult, or turn a hobby into a revenue stream. That represents the psychological leap I'm talking about. It's the shift from being a passive consumer who just tries to make their fixed salary stretch to becoming an active producer who creates multiple streams of income. Why spend 20 hours a week clipping coupons when you could spend 20 hours a week building an asset that pays you indefinitely?
Because the two approaches aren't mutually exclusive. In fact, without the defensive side, the offensive side is entirely useless.
What do you mean?
Let's say you start that side hustle. You freelance, you bring in an extra $2,000 a month. What happens next? Human nature dictates Parkinson's law. Our expenses rise to meet our income. If you immediately scale your lifestyle to match that new revenue, if you buy a nicer car or take expensive trips because you feel you earned it, you haven't increased your net worth by a single dime. You've just become a more expensive version of poor.
So the income generation has to be paired with a capture mechanism.
Precisely. Budgeting isn't a middle-class punishment. It is a mechanical capture system. When you operate below your means, it ensures that the extra income from those ambitious side hustles actually makes it over to the asset column. Without the frugal discipline to capture the wealth, the ability to generate it is meaningless.
Okay, I agree that capturing the wealth is necessary, but the engine of generation and the ability to sustain that capture system over decades is fundamentally psychological. We keep talking about what to do, right? Cut expenses, invest the difference, start a side hustle. But how do you actually maintain those habits for 25 years?
With a spreadsheet.
Budgeting and frugality require immense willpower, and as behavioral economics shows us, willpower is a depreciating asset. You wake up tired, you've had a hard week, and suddenly that expensive dinner looks like a well-deserved reward. This is why a deep psychological shift is required, specifically through practices like daily affirmations.
Oh, come on. I have to stop you there, because affirmations often sound dangerously close to wishful thinking. Standing in front of a mirror saying, "I deserve to be wealthy," doesn't automatically put money in an index fund.
I completely understand why it sounds woo-woo. I really do. I struggled with this concept myself until I understood the neuroscience behind it. It isn't magic, it's cognitive restructuring.
Cognitive restructuring?
Yeah. Our brains have a filter called the reticular activating system, or the RAS. It determines what information gets through to your conscious mind. If you have deeply ingrained limiting beliefs, if you subconsciously associate wealth with greed, or if you feel guilty for wanting to surpass your parents' financial level, your RAS will filter out opportunities to grow. You will unconsciously sabotage your own affiliate marketing business, or you'll find an excuse to panic sell your stock portfolio the moment the market gets rocky.
So you're saying the affirmations program the filter.
Exactly. When you consistently practice affirming that you deserve wealth and that making money allows you to help your family, you are actively reprogramming your brain to spot opportunities instead of threats. You have to actively distance yourself from peers who reinforce scarcity, because if you don't fundamentally fix the internal psychology, the external mechanical steps will eventually collapse under the weight of your own self-sabotage.
That's a compelling argument. But have you considered that you can entirely bypass the need for daily motivation through choice architecture?
Choice architecture?
Yes. You just said willpower is a depreciating asset. I agree completely. You cannot rely on waking up every morning feeling inspired by an affirmation to make the right financial choice. This is exactly why the most powerful tool for a beginner isn't a mantra, it's automation.
Oh, setting up systems to do the work for you?
Right. You set up a system where a specific percentage of your income is automatically routed into an investment account.
Say a broad market index fund, which is essentially a basket that holds a tiny piece of hundreds of companies, so you aren't guessing which specific one wins.
Sure.
You have that money moved before it ever hits your checking account, before you even see it. That completely bypasses human emotional fatigue. You don't need to feel good about making money, and you don't need your reticular activating system to spot an opportunity if the money is already compounding in the background. Treating wealth creation like building a strong brick wall, placing one realistic, automated block over the other, is how you win. It removes the human error from the equation entirely.
I'm not totally convinced by that line of reasoning because it reduces the human being to a mere algorithm. Yes, automation is a fantastic, necessary tool. But who sets up the automation in the first place? Who makes the terrifying decision to divert 20% of their paycheck into an invisible account instead of using it to upgrade their car? And more importantly, when that person gets a raise, who makes the decision to increase the automated contribution rather than succumb to lifestyle creep?
The person who has disciplined their budget.
No, the person who has undergone the psychological transformation. A budget is just a spreadsheet. It has no soul. It can't inspire you. The ambition to achieve true financial freedom is what gives a beginner the courage to face the ugly reality of their current finances. It's what drives them to do the hard work of looking at their debts and aggressively investing in assets despite the pervasive cultural fear of market crashes.
But let's be honest about human nature here. The ambition to quote-unquote think bigger often leads beginners straight into the trap of looking for shortcuts. When people yearn for limitless wealth without grounding themselves in the mundane reality of frugality, they make disastrous choices.
Well, not always.
They take on bad leverage, they invest in highly speculative bubbles, they buy volatile crypto assets hoping for a moonshot, and they get wiped out. The psychological shift must be heavily weighted toward discipline, not just ambition. True enduring prosperity is found in the mastery of the mundane. It starts from your daily expenses. It starts with ensuring you are spending less than you earn consistently every single month.
It is the mastery of the mundane, yes, but in service of the extraordinary. Let's look at where our perspectives lead us as we summarize this discourse. From my standpoint, the evidence clearly indicates that building significant net worth from scratch requires a beginner to utterly shatter their comfort zone. You cannot shrink your way to wealth.
You must conquer the fear of market volatility, abandon the middle-class obsession with projecting an aesthetic of success, and shift your entire mindset from relying on a fragile fixed salary to embracing exponential asset growth. The psychological leap, supported by cognitive restructuring and the courage to expand your income, is the ultimate driver.
And I summarize my position by noting that while ambition provides the necessary initial spark, the true foundation of wealth is grounded in the unglamorous mechanics of frugal budgeting, aggressive debt elimination, and securing a robust cash buffer. Taking risks without this defensive foundation is reckless. True financial growth comes from lowering your fixed burn rate, automating your savings to bypass emotional fatigue, and ensuring you actually capture the wealth you generate.
I think where we absolutely converge today is on how we fundamentally redefine wealth itself. It requires stripping away the illusion. Wealth is not the brand new car in the driveway, it isn't the zip code, and it isn't reaching a high salary just to look rich while secretly living paycheck to paycheck.
Exactly. True wealth is the mathematical and practical reality of financial freedom. It is the ability to survive indefinitely on the assets you have accumulated without being tethered to an employer or a biweekly paycheck.
Balancing these two perspectives is the ultimate tightrope walk for any beginner investor. You need the psychological ambition to venture into the market and expose yourself to growth, but you also need the iron discipline to live below your means and automate your defense. Think of your personal economy like a leaky bucket in a hot room. Inflation is the heat evaporating your purchasing power, and your daily expenses are the leaks.
Right. You have to aggressively plug the holes, that's your frugality and budgeting, but you also have to turn on the hose and pump new water in. That's your compound interest and asset growth. You can't survive doing just one.
So true.
It is up to you to decide which of those mechanisms you need to fix first on your own journey to financial freedom. There are even more layers to these ancient wealth secrets waiting to be explored in the source material, but that's all we have time for today.